Chapter 111. Let Me Lose Myself. Shoko drew back the curtain for privacy when Gojo and Geto dropped by the clinic. She motioned for Geto to sit on the hospital bed, noting the dark circles and puffiness under his eyes. Geto's lips were slightly swollen. There was bruising and a small cut in the corner of his mouth from Gojo forcing his fingers down his throat. He grimaced every time he swallowed. When he took his uniform coat and dress shirt off, she saw more purple marks around his neck. "So what happened?" she asked Geto as she gently held his chin with 2 fingers, tipping it up to check for any other damage. She stepped back, waiting for an answer. Gojo opened his mouth to speak, but stayed quiet when Shoko side-eyed him. Geto rubbed his lips with the tips of his fingers. "I started choking in my sleep." "On what?" Shoko asked when Geto didn't elaborate any further. Geto shrugged. "I don't know, but I couldn't breathe. Satoru had to help me." Shoko took a step back and held her hands up to Geto. They began to glow with cursed energy. "Hold still," she told him, as if he hadn't been her patient dozens of times already. Geto closed his eyes. Gojo watched as Shoko held her hands over Geto's face, smoothing out the bags under his eyes, sealing the cut on his mouth, easing the swelling in his lips. She placed both hands at the base of Geto's neck, touching her thumbs together. Her eyebrows furrowed. His upper esophagus was marked with abrasions. "You don't know what you choked on? By the damage in your throat, I'd say you swallowed something about the size of a plum." She pressed her hands to Geto a little more firmly as the tissues healed underneath her touch. The hair on the back of Gojo's neck prickled. "Gojo, you didn't notice anything when you checked him?" Shoko asked. "I checked his throat when he stopped breathing. There was nothing in there," Gojo explained. Shoko turned back to Geto and placed a light hand on his knee. "You feel better now? Anything else that needs examining?" The clinical tone she had at first softened into something warmer. Geto shook his head. "I'm okay." "You'll probably need a pass. Give me a sec." Shoko scribbled something on a notepad and handed it to Gojo as Geto fixed his uniform. They said goodbye to Shoko and walked to class, almost half an hour late. Yaga took the note from Gojo, seamlessly continuing his lecture despite the interruption, even though all eyes focused on the pair. Gojo shot a friendly warning look around the room, and people returned their attention back to Yaga. Geto bent over his notebook, trying to look engrossed in the lesson, but Gojo could tell he was tired. He held his pen to the page, but didn't write. His face was too low to the paper. Gojo pushed his glasses up the bridge of his nose and leaned back, crossing his arms over his chest. Were he and Yaga really doing right by Suguru? He wondered. Is forcing him to go against his natural instincts with this curse technique helping him or harming him? Gojo thought that they were trying to help Geto understand that the curse's residue didn't have to become part of his emotional baggage. Geto's mood reflected whatever he'd just ingested. Gojo didn't want Geto to be tasked with taking on their pain as his own. Geto needed to know those feelings belonged to the curses and not with him. Gojo's eyes traced the curve of Geto's back as he hunched over the desk. He almost reached out to touch him. When it was time for Geto to train with Yaga in the afternoon, Gojo didn't wait in the hallway. He wanted to see what triggered Geto's nightmare. Geto waited on the mats, glad that Gojo was there. Yaga made his way to the foyer to see Gojo. "Did something happen?" Yaga asked him. "I just wanted to be present during his training today. I'll stay out of your way." Gojo didn't want to answer for Geto. It was up to him if he wanted to tell Yaga what he went through last night. Yaga cast barriers around the room and glanced at Geto. "Who had to be treated by Shoko this morning? You?" Yaga asked. Geto nodded. Of course it was him. He was always the one getting hurt. "We can talk about it later," Yaga said when Geto didn't offer up any information about his doctor's visit. "What I need from you in this session is to stay present during the activation of your curse technique. Be mindful of everything you're doing. Be alert enough to stop yourself from swallowing the curse. Stay here," he swept his hand around the room. "Not here," he tapped his head. Geto understood what Yaga wanted from him, but when he lost himself during his curse technique, he didn't know how to recover. Gojo watched from the edge of the mat as Yaga set the monk curse free, and Geto defeated the humanoid being in just a few quick, brutal moves. He was hypnotized by Geto's hands as he formed the curse into a ball. He noticed the slight change in Geto's demeanor as he held the curse in his palm. His eyes clouded over and his lips parted. Yaga noticed it too. "Right there," he declared, marking the moment Geto lost himself. He knew Geto didn't hear him when he saw his fingers close around the ball. Yaga quickly grabbed Geto's wrist. "Geto, focus," Yaga said sternly. He could feel Geto fight his hold. He continued trying to bring his hand to his mouth. "Come on, Geto, come back." He firmly pressed his thumb onto the inside of Geto's wrist, causing him to involuntarily open his hand. The pain startled Geto, and Yaga took the curse from him and locked it away. Gojo was already there beside Geto, trying not to interfere, but wanting to know why he kept losing himself. "Where were you just now?" Yaga asked Geto. Geto's voice caught in his throat. "I don't know, Sensei. I don't remember." "That's a brutal case of dissociation," Yaga answered. "Maybe that's how it needs to be," Gojo said. "Gojo," Yaga started. "Maybe we need to stop messing with his natural technique. Maybe there's a reason his mind shuts down when it does," Gojo told him. "Gojo, I think you're a little too close to the situation to think objectively," Yaga countered. "Stop talking about me like I'm not here," Geto's exasperated voice echoed across the room. "Neither of you get it. It's not just the nasty taste of the curses. I'm fucking afraid of swallowing them. It hurts. Sometimes they're bumpy or sharp. My throat can only expand so much. I feel like my throat is going to tear to pieces. Then the curse tries to fight me from the inside, and all I feel is their anger, their sorrow, their disgust, their resentment, their grief, all their ugliness as they settle inside my body." Geto's hands were clenched tight. "You don't know how bad my jaw hurts, how raw my throat is, the way my guts burn, the thoughts I can't stop running through my head. It fucking sucks. All of it fucking sucks, and I figured out a way to block out a little bit of it, and now you want me to be present for all the pain? What the fuck?" Geto screamed. He let out a frustrated cry and held his hands to his head. The chamber was silent except for Geto's anguished breathing, loud and raspy. "Suguru, I didn't know," Gojo began. "You didn't really want to know, did you? Because there's nothing you can do for me. Nobody asks me. Nobody cares. You just need me to keep performing like a monkey." Geto finally broke down in tears, collapsing to his knees. Gojo blinked at Geto helplessly and turned to Yaga. Yaga looked down at Geto, concern in his eyes. It wasn't often that he had to admit that he was wrong, but he was starting to think this was one of those times. Because he never truly understood Geto's innate technique, he made assumptions about how he functioned. Geto's body and mind were trying to protect him, and instead of allowing protection, Yaga was trying to take it away, thinking it would cause Geto harm in the long run. Considering the short lifespans of Jujutsu sorcerers, maybe thinking about the effects in the long run was the wrong thing to do. He bent down and placed a hand on Geto's shoulder. Geto's sobbing subsided as Yaga's firm touch grounded him, and he gave him time to settle down. Geto was able to stand after a few minutes. He swayed a little bit, and Gojo held on to his elbow. "Geto, every student and teacher's curse technique is unique to themselves. Nobody's functions in the same way. Only the user is the true expert on what they can or cannot do. I forgot that with you. There are some ways I think you can cope better, but I was wrong for trying to turn your technique into something it isn't." Yaga paused, and Geto looked up at him with red-rimmed eyes. Geto's hopeless expression caused Yaga's stomach to clench. "We use the term curse technique and jujutsu power interchangeably because ultimately your ability is your power. You have an arsenal at your disposal. You can command an army. If you wanted to, you could take over the world. That's power. You need to change your mindset and control your power. We can work on that. But for the time being, I think we should take a few days break and we'll have to strategize with strengthening what you don't need to change and learn to cope with what you can't change. Geto nodded. What about the higher ups? Aren't they monitoring our training? Gojo asked. Gojo, when it's your turn to serve as a teacher, you'll understand. There's a delicate balance between fulfilling the higher ups' directives and then remembering that your students are people, not exercising machines. We don't always get it right, but we try. I go to bat for you guys, even when you don't know it. Don't worry about the higher ups right now. Yaga turned back to Geto. I still expect you in class, but we'll back off training for a few days. Call me if you need to sit down and talk. And if not me, find someone to confide in. You were holding in a lot that needed to be heard. I'm sorry I put you through that. Yaga's apology lingered in the air as he turned to gather his things. Gojo and Geto followed him and they somberly left Jujutsu headquarters. Geto was the one who reached for Gojo's hand as they walked back to their room. Gojo entwined his fingers in his. His chest felt heavy, and he was glad Geto wanted his touch. If anyone noticed them holding hands, Gojo and Geto were too concerned with other things to care. Geto changed into his comfort outfit, sweatpants and sweatshirt. Gojo put on a pair of pajama pants and a baggy t-shirt. He pulled Geto against him underneath the comforter, and they lay in bed. Geto's head was throbbing, and Gojo rubbed the muscles in his back and neck. Gojo kissed Geto's forehead. Suguru, you're the one I love, and I never heard you. Gojo thought of all the times he'd missed Geto's cries for help. He pulled away a little to look at Geto's tear-stained face. Geto looked so small and sad in that moment. Gojo touched a gentle finger to Geto's lips, the ones that had to violently part to consume a curse. Gojo wielded his power like a trophy, while Geto's own power was something he had to survive and endure. Geto's sudden sobbing startled Gojo. Baby, what's wrong? What's wrong? Gojo tucked Geto's hair behind his ear. I don't want to think anymore. Make it stop. Please, Geto wailed. What? How? Suguru, tell me. I'll do anything, Gojo said frantically. Geto tried to pull Gojo on top of him. Gojo understood. He kissed the places on Geto's cheeks where there were fresh tears and kissed him on the mouth. He pulled Geto's pants down, then his own. Geto held his arms around Gojo tight as they gently made love. Geto gratefully lost himself in the friction of their bodies, Gojo's hands roaming over his chest and shoulders as he thrust into him. By the time Gojo filled him up, Geto was calmed and settled, then gasped as Gojo reached down and made him come with his hand. Gojo spooned Geto from behind, enveloping him tight in his arms. Both were emotionally and physically spent. Geto slept heavily, doubly as exhausted as Gojo. Gojo closed his eyes, but the darkness shifted to light. Geto was there, turning to smile at him. Gojo's heart leapt. He looked down at his arms. There they were. The baby twins stirred, but remained asleep, each nestling close to their daddy's chest.